Welcome everyone to another episode of Unity Manifest Podcast. And today our guest is Brian Godawa, and he has written countless books on all kinds of good versus evil topics from the Bible. Thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, Gary. Should be interesting.
Yes. So I'm going to start out with a really easy question. Like, what really got you interested in this topic, and how can you I don't know. Is like writing as many books as you are writing on this topic. Obviously, too, you're trying to make some kind of point or statement also.
Sure,
So
sure.
what brought you to this?
Yeah, well, the new book is called Judah Maccabee, and it's the retelling of the story of the Maccabees. Maybe some people may have heard of that. And it's a story about a Jewish revolt that occurred in the time of the second century BC, under the Greek kingdom reign over them, the Seleucid kingdom. And it's a story that happens between the testaments, the Old and the New Testament. So it's not in the Bible officially, but it's in what's called the Apocrypha, and which is an interesting story in and of itself. We can talk about that in a while, but and the essence of the story is it's part of my series called Chronicles of the Watchers. And what I do is I don't just tell the story, I don't just recount the historical story, but I like to incorporate a supernatural worldview that I see in the Bible that has to do with principalities and powers over nations, and their sort of, cosmic battle that goes on during the
Mhm.
earthly battles, so to speak. And that's the ancient paradigm, actually, not just of the Bible, but of all the ancient Near Eastern religions. They had the belief that there was a heavenly realm and an earthly realm, and what goes on in the earthly realm was connected to heavenly realm. So when there was a battle on earth, there was a battle in heaven. Very simple, something like that. And that there were these, angels, you can call them angels and demons or whatever. In the Bible, they're called gods, actually. Elohim, which is a word
Mhm.
for God. And that means divine being. Doesn't mean that they're gods like the creator God is, but they're definitely spiritual divine beings. And they play out in stories that we're familiar with. The angel of the Lord came and slaughtered the, 100,000 Assyrians and stuff like that. But there's also a picture that's sort of bigger than that, that includes things like in the book of Daniel, we read about when in ancient history, the Persian kingdom had sort of taken over the world from Babylon. And then ultimately, when Alexander the Great came, the Greek kingdom overtook the Persian kingdom, right, in terms of that area.
Mhm.
And so in the book of Daniel, that's described as the historical reality is described as also having these spiritual princes or principalities, that is, heavenly territorial spirits, so to speak, that are over these nations. And so Daniel describes at the same time when that Greek kingdom is starting to put pressure against the Persian kingdom, he describes it as like the prince of Greece came and fought with the prince of Persia, right? And Michael, the prince of Israel, helped me to fight them. So it's this strange thing that's not a lot. It's not revealed a lot, but it's just
Mhm.
revealed some in the Bible. So that was the inspiration of me writing my entire book series called Chronicles of the Watchers, but also it originated with Chronicles of the Nephilim. So if you look up my name on Amazon, you'll find all these different Chronicles series, and they're basically
Yes.
the same thing, retelling these stories. So that was the thing that really inspired me, and I don't know what this spiritual world looks like exactly, and we get only hints of it from the Bible. So I apply some, creative imagination. What do they call it? Um, uh, Whatever, just speculation of what it might look like if we could see behind the veil of the spiritual world, that kind
Mhm.
of thing. But I also, at the same time, I try to be true to the actual historical events. So I'm trying to show the two worlds at the same time. And what really another component of it that I think your listeners might be interested in is I've always had a fascination with ancient history and ancient religion and mythology and stuff, and how that stuff interacts. Because, as a Christian, I read the Bible, I believe in the Bible, I follow the Bible, but I also understand that the Jews did not exist in a vacuum, and the literature of the Bible doesn't exist in a vacuum. So there is definitely interaction in terms of with other religions and mythologies.
Mhm.
How that looks and what that takes place, you have a difference between a liberal theology and a conservative theology, but nonetheless, I do believe that there is a lot of interaction. So I research a lot of these, mythologies and religions, and I incorporate them into my story in a way that is definitely in the service of my worldview. But for example, the new book, Judah Maccabee, it's a story of the Jewish kingdom at the time in Judea being under the authority of, or under the authority, being, a what do you call it? Yeah, under the power of the Seleucid kingdom, which was a Greek kingdom started by that came out of Alexander's death, right? And so at this time in history, in that time period, we have the Greek Seleucid or Seleucid kingdom in the north in Syria, and you've got Israel in the middle, and then the bottom was Egypt, and they also had Greek rulers called the Ptolemies, Ptolemy, Ptolemies. And those were two Greek kingdoms that, in a way, were battling over land and power
Mhm.
at that time, and Israel's stuck in the middle of it. So I looked into, the Egyptian religion and the Egyptian sort of worldview, as well as the Greek gods, Zeus and all that, and how that plays with their worldviews as they are also interacting and struggling with Israel. So I guess that's the big picture, metaphysical, spiritual context in which I write. So I do
Mhm.
like to draw from history and mythology and incorporate it in a creative way, so that when people read my novels, they aren't just getting historical facts, and they're not just reading made up stuff. They're actually going to get an understanding of the religious metaphysical worldview of those other Gentile nations at the same time. So that's kind of how I operate.
Do you think that these accounts in the Bible of the Nephilim were actual literal physical beings, or were they like light beings, demons?
Yeah.
Like how do you think they appeared in this particular dimension, if they appeared at all, or were they just ideas?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And that's another component, as you pointed out, that the Nephilim. What is the Nephilim? And that of course is a very, very popular subject now, and even within the last 10 years that I started writing these novels, it's become huge. And of course, there's very varying theories, and even within the Christian world, there's different theories of what the Nephilim are. And I take Nephilim. If you go back to Genesis 6 verses 1 through 4, that's the one of the significant passages about the Nephilim. And there it talks about how the sons of God, which is a technical term for certain heavenly divine beings, sons of God came to earth and mated with women, human women, and and that, which is a strange, I know, and sometimes it sounds mythological, right? Because of course, hey, didn't the gods of Greece and all these gods come and mate with human women? Isn't that the same thing? Isn't that mythology? Well, it is playing off the same concepts. The question is it mythology, or is it a reality that in some way that occurred in ancient past, of which all subsequent religions and languages and cultures then sort of spin their own tale and their own versions of that. And so I think that's in fact what occurs. And as a Christian, I unashamedly I believe the Bible is the most accurate picture of what really happened. However, I do acknowledge that I'm not a kind of a Christian who says, well, if the Bible says it, then that's literally what happened, because I
Mhm.
don't. I've studied literature, and I'm a creative writer, and I know for a fact that the Bible has many genres of writing within it, whether it's poetry, parables, as well as drawing from mythology and incorporating that into the text. So you have to be more nuanced than just saying, well, the Bible, if it's literally in the Bible, then that's literally how it happened, because the writers didn't intend that to be the case.
Mhm.
One of the so I'm getting to the Nephilim, but I just want to give some examples. One of my examples that I like to talk about a lot is Leviathan. You read about the Leviathan in the
Yes.
Bible, and that's a sea monster, right? And some people think, oh, that's literally a dinosaur in the sea or something, But no, no. I mean, if you study Leviathan in the Bible, you'll find that it is actually a symbolic creative expression of chaos. The writer knows exactly what they're doing. They don't believe there's a literal sea dragon of chaos, but they're using that monster in their writings to explain, to embody creatively, imaginatively embody the notion of chaos. And in the ancient world, we know that order versus chaos is a very powerful universal theme, the battle of order versus chaos. So you'll find, whether it's in Babylonian religion or Canaanite religion, you'll find the same concept of a sea dragon of chaos,
Hmm.
Tiamat in Babylon, right? And Leviathan or Lotan in Syrian or Canaanite, which was the neighbors of Israel, right? And they all use that as a mythological or symbolic monster to express the chaos that they believed their God was pushing back at bay to create the order of the universe or the order of their religion or what have you, right? And so the Bible's no different in that it says, no, our God is the God, storm God, who pushes back the chaos, crushes the heads of Leviathan, right? As he establishes his covenanted order. So in a chapter like Psalm 78, I think you'll read about, it's a description of the Israelites crossing the Red Sea, but you'll see it has a lot of figurative and poetic imagery in there, including Leviathan. And it's saying, as God passes them through the sea, he crushes the heads of Leviathan. What the writer's doing there is deliberately, poetically speaking about how God brought Israelites out of the disorder of Egypt, which disorder because they were not followers of Yahweh. And he brought them into the wilderness and gave them his law, right? Which was his establishment of order out of the chaos of Egypt. That's how their thinking was, right? So does that mean, oh, the Bible's just a bunch of myths and, poetry? No, no, I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is, we all, even when we write history, we incorporate creative concepts and symbols in order to express the deeper reality. And that's what the Bible does. So the question then becomes, well, is Genesis 6 one of those passages? Some people believe it is. I don't, I think, but I also don't think that I don't think that there's enough revealed on the surface to understand exactly what it looked like. Just other than that, maybe it did happen. Um, and for instance, there's a Syriologist scholar named Amar Anus, and what he does is he has written an article on this concept of the Watchers and the Nephilim passage, so to speak, the sons of God, right? And he shows how in Babylon they had what's called the Anunnaki, or the people who came from the sea, sort of thing, right? And so there are modern people who believe, oh, those are aliens, or Graham Hancock says, oh, that's a creative way of speaking about an intelligent race that came out of the Ice Age and brought wisdom. So yeah, all these are possible theories. I think that in a way, so I think that the biblical passage is a polemical passage, and what I mean by that is there are also passages in the Bible where um, they are writing polemically against pagan religions, and in this case, those beings, Amar Anus is the one that points out that these supernatural beings that the Babylonian mythology says came out and gave wisdom to man. That's their mythology, right? And the Anunnaki and all that, and they gave the wisdom to man, right? And so and of course, there's a lot of things connected to that. But I think the biblical writers might be keying in on that understanding because Babylon had become a world dominating nation, right?
Hmm.
Kingdom, and I think the biblical writer Moses or whatever editor may have worked on that was making a point that these beings that you think brought wisdom to man actually brought destruction. The knowledge they gave was forbidden, and it resulted in the world that we now live in, full of war, violence, oppression, right? And so, and in the biblical view, it's the view is these are angelic beings who fell from God's, throne rooms, whatever, rebelled. People know about Lucifer and all that, right? Well, these sons of God were rebels who came to earth and they violated the heavenly divide between earth and heaven by mating with human women. That was a complete violation of God's separated created order. And so they brought this kind of destruction upon people, and they gave, and the Book of Enoch, which is another, again, it's not in the Bible, but it's
Hmm.
definitely in that ancient Jewish tradition. The concept was that, these sons of God came and brought forbidden knowledge, including the occult, things that man shouldn't know or shouldn't engage in. And yeah, they brought some knowledge that was helpful, some technology, but they brought warfare, that kind of a thing. So that's the maybe the paradigm that is going on in the biblical picture. And it makes sense to me that, hey, look, if there are angels and the supernatural world be above and beyond us, then this kind of thing is possible. So I believe that it's as literal as you can take it in the
Hmm.
Bible. What exactly that looks like, I don't know. There could be a varying variation of what that really looks like in the real world because we don't know the details, right? But um, I take that element to be a polemical, but also somewhat historical reality, such that by the time that the Israelites come into the land of Canaan, right, around 1400 BC or so, and they send the spies in the land. They come back and they say there's giants in there, and these giants come from the Nephilim, and that writer is referring to the only other place in the Bible that talks about Nephilim, which is before the flood, and that incident that occurred before the flood was part of the cause for the flood. It brought violence upon humanity, and therefore God destroyed the world with a flood, the known world at the time, right? And so there's that sense of, you know, in the Bible. Does that mean when it says they're giants, it was just metaphorical about mighty warriors? Well, they are mighty warriors. It definitely says that. But
Hmm.
I think if you study the concept of the giants and the Anakim that are in the Bible, I think it is literally their great height. And that doesn't mean they're 30 feet high and 20 feet high. It just means they're very tall men. Goliath was 9'6", but the Septuagint, which is a how should we say, has some different translations of the Hebrew. There's some Septuagint texts that the numbers are different there, and it may be that Goliath was more like 6'6" or so, right? But in either case, he's a very large man. That's the point. And so the writers of the Bible are saying that there's these large beings in there in the land, and we're coming to cleanse them out. And so there is a sense of literality to that I think is real. But exactly everything, all the details, there's some things I'm not sure about. But that's sort of the generic picture. And that's why I write my novels with that in mind. And I push the envelope a little bit. I'm creative. You know, like in my novels, I do have Leviathan, the sea dragon,
Uh,
and he shows up and I try to make him in the spiritual realm, but he obviously has ramifications upon what's going on at the time. So I'll have the angels fighting the Leviathan dragon or something like that. And again, that's imagination, but the goal is to try to capture this notion of there's another in the Bible. There's another realm. It's a heavenly realm. It's a spiritual realm. And what is that like? It's not the same as the earthly. And that's the big picture paradigm. Now, I don't know how that interacts or plays with, your metaphysics, but
Well, here's
that's where I'm
what it
working
makes
from.
me think. Like, I have no doubt that that something existed on this planet prior to humans or alongside of humans that wasn't human, in a previous epoch before the flood, for the Younger Dryas. So, and that's been documented not just in the Bible, but it's in other cultures as well. You
Yeah.
see it in almost all of them. They all talk about some previous race of beings before humans, or as we were just becoming human. I mean, it happened. We've also found physical, bones of giants. They say that the Smithsonian hid away. um, you know,
I don't know. You got to show that to me first, but yeah. But see, here's the thing. We live in a world of conspiracy. It's no where the difference between conspiracy theory and the truth is a matter of 6 months, right?
mhm.
And so now we all know that so many of these conspiracy theories have been proven to be true, and so there's a lot more open. Like I think Joe Rogan said that something like, you know, he used to question all conspiracy theories. Now he believes them all. And I think a lot of us have that because we've seen so many of these things uncovered. But what it speaks to is you mentioned the various cultures that have this theory of the after the as you said the Hancock theory is the Younger Dryas and all that, the catastrophe. Well, here's how this plays out. So the ancient aliens worldview now, because it's rooted in a materialist metaphysic, post-enlightened scientism worldview, which believes there are no supernatural things. See, they'll look back and they'll see this story of the angels coming from heaven, mating with the human daughters of men, and and birthing hybrid monsters. To them, that's so fantastical. It's obviously mythological. It's obviously not real. And so then they take their worldview and they spin the material into their view, which is, oh, ancient man was ignorant and they were interacted with extraterrestrial beings. They thought they were angels, but they were really extraterrestrial beings, right? So that's one way of how they reinterpret the history.
Mhm.
But really, or you've got like the Hancock thing that you mentioned. These are, after the Younger Dryas, the catastrophe occurs. A lot of humanity is wiped out, but some more advanced civilization travels and shares their knowledge to these, more primitive hunter-gatherer societies that survived to help them out of their predicament. And then that became immortalized into the mythology of the sons of God and the Anunnaki or whatever, right? But then there's another paradigm, which is the biblical paradigm, which is no, these were angelic beings because there is a supernatural world. And so the biblical paradigm looks at the scientism paradigm and says, you are looking at something and spinning it according to your ignorance. In other words, because you can't accept or don't believe, or you are ignorant to the spiritual realm,
Mhm.
you therefore reinterpret supernatural things as if they're I'm sorry, materialistic, aliens, right? So, in other words, the claim is reversible. The claim of ignorance is completely reversible. And, does that mean everything's relative? No, I don't. I don't think so. But we just have to, obviously just study and get to know these things, but look into them deeper. But that's how I see it. Is yeah, you have these varying ways of interpreting the material. But I do. But my main understanding is this: that however that notion of sons of God and the Nephilim in the Bible, whatever that literally looked like, I'm not entirely sure, but theologically, what it means within the text, which is, again, I think that the Bible does have is God's word to humanity
Right. Yeah,
through
it
providence.
sort of comes down to this knowledge, right, that they shared with us in the mating with humans is the
Yeah.
big thing. What do you think the knowledge is? Like, what kind of knowledge could they share with us that is harmful to humanity?
Well, I think, there's a lot of debate about, like, if you read Book of Enoch, I
Hmm.
don't think Enoch is scripture, so I don't think that it has to all be true. But I think so. I don't agree with all of the Book of Enoch, but I do think that some of what Enoch points out is occultic knowledge, meaning, it talks about, shows them how to use roots and sorcery. And if you understand the root word of sorcery in Greek is pharmakia. So there's some usage of drugs to elicit connection with this other realm, right? So, and the notion of the occult is the attempt of humanity or mankind to make connection and interact with a spiritual realm using various means, whether it's roots or Ouija boards or what have you, whatever. And in the Bible, though, it's very specifically spelled out by God. He forbids that you engage in talking to the dead, necromancy, right? Do not, fortune tellers, witchcraft, all that stuff, he forbids. And the serpent, in the text, he says, God's trying to hide from you. He doesn't want you to be like him because he's jealous. And of course, that's what modern day humanistic views say. It's like, oh yeah, the Bible was wrong. It was actually the serpent who gave wisdom, right? But God's just a jealous God, and he doesn't want you to know the things that he knows, right? So that's the Gnostic paradigm
Hmm.
that spins the Genesis text. But I think contextually in Genesis, it's very clear that the knowledge of good and evil is not knowledge in general, right? It's I think that contextually, what it means is when you take upon yourself the authority of determining what is right and wrong, rather than allowing God Himself to tell you what is right or wrong and faithfully accepting that and following Him. In other words, the Creator makes it, He says what's right and wrong, and you follow it. But when you start to say, no, no, I think I can determine for myself,
But how do you
I
know?
think that's the essence.
How do you know what the creator wants, or how has the creator decided what's right and wrong? Do we have to refer to the Bible every time? Go, okay, I'm gonna look up the situation here and see if it's right or wrong,
Mm.
or is there some type of direct communication between a human and God?
Well, um, where you are addressing a worldview issue, which, like I say, it does go beyond. Like I can
Mm-hmm.
sit and tell you what I think the Bible says, right? But of course, if someone doesn't believe the Bible, they're, well, I don't care what the Bible says, right? So I get that, but in
Mm-hmm.
terms of, you have to understand what is your underlying worldview, how your epistemology, right? Your ontology, and your epistemology is, how do you know what you know? Like what you're saying is, how do you know what's right or wrong? Within the biblical paradigm, the Christian worldview, that our epistemology, really, and our ontology, and our morality are all rooted in the Trinity, which is the three in one, triune God.
Mm-hmm.
And that has philosophical ramifications, which we could talk about. But so, and the bottom line is, as trying to be as find as much common ground as I can with an opposing worldview, right? Because I
Mm-hmm.
know there's a materialist paradigm, there's a Gnostic paradigm, there's lots of paradigms. Well, I would say this is that if, as created beings, we are, certainly everyone would acknowledge we are finite, we are contingent, so therefore we we do not know ultimate reality because I can show you philosophically, you can never know what ultimate reality is as a finite contingent being. Therefore, within the Christian paradigm, it has to be revealed to us. This is
Mm-hmm.
the notion of revelation, which is, and this goes throughout all of church history, and that is, God must reveal it to us because we could never know. You can tell me, give me any paradigm of what reality is like, and I can completely eviscerate it into relativism because we just can't know for sure. We can guess, we can make up stories, fairy tales of, materialism or whatever, but we never can know because what is knowledge? Knowledge is justified true belief. That's one way of seeing it, right? And so if you believe it, but you can't justify it and you can't prove it's true, well, then it's not knowledge, right? And so ultimately, true ultimate knowledge like I'm talking about things like what is reality? What is good and evil?
Hmm.
That has to be revealed by the creator because otherwise everything's relative. Everything's just relative.
See,
And
see, this is where I get confused, okay? Because it's like, okay, all these truths have to be revealed to us by God.
Mhm.
But at the same time, God is saying, no, do not use these occult methods to find out the truth. So it seems
Mhm.
like God is contradicting himself, or like there's a contradiction here. Like there's God saying, yes, I want you to do my will. And then over here, he's saying, but you can't use these methods to do my will, even though they will help you do it and make a
Well,
connection
I
to
don't
me.
think he's saying they will help you do it. I
Well,
mean, he's saying,
they do make a connection. They do help people reconnect to certainly other dimensions.
well, I think um, there's several components to this, but one of them is the what God is forbidding, he's forbidding for our own good, not because he's withholding something from us. And so you see examples in the Bible where people who do speak to the dead get deceived. There are deceiving spirits in the Bible. That's just one little element. Um, in my mind, in my understanding, though, I would say something's not right or wrong because of what it results in. Something is right or wrong intrinsically. And so that's why I'm saying if God says not to do it, then that's called the divine command theory of ethics. And that's the bottom line. God is the creator of the universe, so he defines what is right and wrong. And so what you're saying is, if we use these methods, we're finding knowledge and truth. And I would say, no, I don't think you are. But you are engaging in forbidden practices, right? Uh, do do you find any truth using these methods? I think the Christian argument, a good example would be Hancock. I saw the latest, documentary of his, and he talks about his his own journey, and he uses ayahuasca. I don't know how you say it.
Ayahuasca,
Ayahuasca.
yeah, I saw this
Ayahuasca,
one,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, and I know that this is a real popular thing now because many people express that they have such vivid experiences that they're actually seeing beings, right?
Hmm.
And it's so they're giving them so-called wisdom, but this is the same wisdom in the garden. See, when the serpent says, he doesn't want you to have it because it will make you like him, knowing you'll be like gods, knowing good and evil. And that that's that's not saying that you will know the truth. It's saying you will be the definition of your own good and evil, which is
Hmm.
ultimately what Satan wants. He wants us to decide what we want to be good and evil, because then anything's a go, right? I mean, if I define what's good and evil, then I could justify anything because I defined it, right? And so in its most essential philosophical premise, only the creator could tell us what is good and evil. And or otherwise it's just all relative. And murder and genocide is okay because there are many people who believe that. There are many people who
Hmm.
believe that's right. So if you don't
So,
have a transcendent objective authority, a
mhm.
transcendent objective authority giving you the knowledge of what is good and evil, you are going to make it up yourself. That's the bottom line. So what I'm suggesting is the serpent is deceiving. When you say that it's knowledge that will help us, no, it's a false knowledge. That's what we call a false knowledge. You're getting information, but it's twisted. It's going to be fallacious and ultimately to your own destruction. But it's rooted in looking into yourself instead of looking into the creator. That's my understanding.
So I have two questions on this one. One, um, where does the free will come from? Like before the serpent, did Adam and Eve really have free will? Because they really didn't even think about it. They didn't even contemplate it until the serpent came and said, "Hey, maybe you should think about this." So actually, like the way I look at it is like man didn't really have any free will or ability to really make decisions for himself until we discovered knowledge, or I guess what you're saying is plant medicine. Um,
No, no, let me explain that though, because I do believe there's a difference between, whatever, homeopathic and using herbs to heal the body and all that kind of stuff versus the ayahuasca. I was going down that pathway because using it as a means to communicate with another realm, that's that's the dangerous component. That doesn't mean it's wrong to use medicine or, herbs to heal. I don't think that's at all what it means. And so the ayahuasca thing, my argument as a Christian is those beings that they're interacting with are demons.
mhm.
And this is a very common theme throughout the Bible. Demons are deceptive creatures who spirits who want to deceive us to keep us away from God, our creator, to keep
But,
us
but what I'm
separate
saying
from
is
our
is
creator.
prior to that though we don't really have free will.
Oh, okay. So free will issue. Yeah. So, look at my approach or my understanding of that, it would be that um I'm I'm persuaded that in the Bible, God is sovereignly, providentially control of all creation, right? But the in the Bible, it also says man is morally responsible for his deeds. He has a kind of free will. How you define free will, that's some people go way off the reservation. So I believe man is free in the sense that he can do what he wants and he can choose what he wants to do. The difference is that if you choose in the garden, when man chooses the evil, chooses to disobey God, then that's what comes upon him is that curse. And the curse then separates him from his creator because of that moral choice. So his freedom was real,
Mhm.
just like, well, just like we, what? I mean, a criminal in society, you can tell a criminal, well, you don't have to do the crime, but if you do, then you're going to be put in jail. And so, yeah, we have a freedom to morally choose. But once that initial choice was made in the garden, and this is the narrative of Genesis, right? How literal is that? I don't know, but I believe it's basically literal, but I don't know how it all works out. But it's a theological expression of that we all are stained with that what would you call it, the sinful nature, which is the self determining our own reality, our own morality, our own choice. I mean, like it's the self in control rather than submitted to the creator. And so once that expression in Adam is, occurs, we all have that same Adamic nature in us, and that is to take control of our lives and not submit control to our creator. That's where our free will is, and we are morally responsible for that. And yet at the same time, the Bible does talk about, nevertheless, God is still, you can't thwart God's will. God achieves what he wants, and he operates above, transcendent, above our earthly reality. And so from our perspective, we have the freedom to engage and do things. But from God's perspective, he still is able to foreordain all things that come to pass. That's how it's put in the Westminster Confession, for example. So it's a mystery, is the bottom line. But from just the most primary biblical perspective,
Mhm.
yes, we are morally free, but if we choose the bad direction, then that has ramifications, which to me is a logical, of course it's going to happen. And the result of that is the sin and the judgment of God upon us. We have the wrath of God upon us. So so the desire. maybe maybe the way I see it is modern man, his desire to want to be in control of his own life. Why do I have to do things God's way? Why do I have to follow this Bible? Why do I have to follow mythology or whatever? It's just an expression of I want to be my own God. I want to be my own creator, my own controller, you know? And that is the ultimate essence of separation from your creator. That's what I would argue as a Christian, you know. I don't know how we went down that path, but maybe I didn't even address what you were asking. Maybe you can
No, you
clarify.
did address it. It was I think like I also wonder like too like I'm thinking of myself like as a kid, and I have this choice. My parents say like, "Well, don't do this," and as a kid, I'll be thinking like, "How do I know to believe these people unless I actually do it?" you know, like that's how you learn.
Yeah,
That's how I grew up. I
yeah.
was like a kid, like okay, I understand these people are telling me not to do this, but
Well, let me ask you this.
but how do I so how do we know that one, God is telling them the truth, you know?
Sure,
And,
sure.
and
I get that.
the other thing is too, is how do you know that the being that they're communicating with is actually God?
Right.
You
Yeah.
can't,
No,
you
that's a,
can't, you can't, you can't really solve those things philosophically, I don't think.
well, I do think, and this is where the Christian religion, this is why I say there's a problem of hyperliteralism with some Christians, but that doesn't mean the Bible isn't literal in many cases and historical. My point is Christianity is not just a metaphysical or philosophical worldview. It is a historical religion, which means the claim, at least we
Mm-hmm.
claim, that God interacts in history. God is transcendent and objective and above, but he enters into history at times and interacts with man. To me, that's a beautiful, warm-hearting thing, as opposed to the Islamic God, who's this just, he's this cold, abstract, non-fatherly figure, But God in the Bible is, he interacts, he comes into history. And so, you're mentioning about kids learning and stuff. Yeah, I mean, there's some truth to that. I wouldn't deny. Yeah, sometimes people have to learn things for themselves. But in principle, that's not a good thing because think about it. Do you want to learn for yourself of not playing in the street?
But then you're
And
giving
then you're
up,
dead,
but you're giving up your free will.
but you're dead. No, think about it this way. Think about, here's what I'm getting at is the things we're told not to do. This is the fundamental difference of opinion or misconception in my mind, in my understanding is to to the essence of rebellion is to say, I know better when you
Mhm.
don't. And so, and so therefore the essence of the sinful nature in mankind is to say to God, oh, I'm losing my train of thought here. Crud. Oh, so the kid who wants to play in the street, I know for your good or for your bad. The kid who wants to play in the street to learn that it's bad to play in the street, he's dead, right? And he gets hit by a car. So the rebel says, the rebel says, you're just trying to keep me from whatever being like you want to keep me from happiness, you want to keep me from fun, you want to sex is good, so you want to keep me from sex. And it's like, no, it's the opposite. The creator created everything. He's got the instruction book, like he knows the way things should be. It's for our good that he tells you don't play in the street. It's for our good that he says, I define, trust me, I define good and evil. It's for our good. So it's a mind shift where if you are a rebel and want to control your own life instead of your creator, you're going to interpret his commands as as restrictions to hurt you. But it's the opposite. No, he's giving us boundaries to protect us. Why shouldn't I play in the street? Why shouldn't I have sex with everyone I can? Well, when you get the disease and you die of AIDS or whatever, you see why it's wrong. You see one aspect of why something is told to us not to do it. It's for our protection, not to keep to keep us from having fun or something like that, you know. But I think that's just a fundamental truth in all of life. Like you said, if you just think about you as a parent, you know, with your kids, you know, you're telling your kids to do all these things. You can only play in the yard. Don't go out in the street. Don't do this. Don't eat that. And what does kids always think? Like, you just don't want me to have fun, Daddy. You know, but we all know, no, it's for your own good. And you'll see when you grow up why I get, you know, and I think that's the same thing with God and us. You know, we don't always understand why he's telling us, like,
Hmm.
don't talk to the dead. Why not? It's interesting. I take ayahuasca and I talk to these other beings, you know? And it's like, no, that's wrong and it's evil. And you'll see why. And he doesn't necessarily reveal why. That I agree. Sometimes I wish he did, you know, I wish he would tell us more, but he doesn't always, you know? And so that would be my argument is that when you're using drugs to, uh, to, to interact with another realm. That's the sorcery element that I think God is saying we shouldn't be doing. And so I think that those beings they're meeting are demonic spirits who are deceiving them. Think about it. If you like, okay, you don't have to believe Christianity. It's okay. Just think about if you're writing a book or a movie or a novel or something, and you have this world of like what was it that world where the reptilian creatures were among us, V or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Well, if there are real evil beings and they want to control people, well, what are they going to do? They're going to deceive people, right? So it makes sense to me that, well, of course, if there are evil beings, they're going to deceive us. They're going to make us think the opposite of what reality really is. That's what I would do if I wanted to control someone or I wanted to hurt someone. I would deceive them into thinking the opposite of reality. And so that's what we as Christians are arguing is that, you know, talking to the dead, seeking the forbidden knowledge in the things that God tells us not to do, divination or what have you. Um, it's forbidden because it's for our good, and we think it's probably because there's deceiving demonic spirits connected to it in some way. And I don't know exactly how it all works, of course, but that's the argument from a biblical perspective, you know. So
Hmm.
I think the real question comes down to, you know, like who is your master? Do you think you're your own master? I am my own captain of my fate and master of my destiny, which is like that's the ultimate humanistic worldview, right? And I think that's the most foolishness of all because you can't even, you know, you don't even know what's on the other side of the street at this moment. How can you be master of anything, you know? Get cancer and then tell me how you're master of your destiny, right? I think self, it's just self-evidently obvious and the absurd that we should be in control of our reality because we're not. And so we look to our Creator. Has He revealed to us anything? And we can trust that and go on that. And interestingly, you know, I'm speaking on the surface right now, but I think it goes even deeper. For example, you know, it's been around for forever that the technology is good, right? I think technology is good. It can become evil, right? If AI becomes control of us and kills us all, right? So, but that doesn't mean all
Intention
tech.
is what has the negative effect.
Yeah.
You know.
So, so, but what I'm getting at is uh, these things can have good and bad consequences. But in effect, technology is the advancement of technology is rooted in a scientific method, right? It's hypothesis testing results, right? That's the essential scientific method itself. And it's long been known in history that it is the earliest scientists were Christians, and that's where the development of the scientific theory came out of was Christianity. Without the biblical worldview, you can't justify the pursuit of science because you don't have you don't have a world in your worldview that comports with the notion of the uniformity of nature, not chaos, the regularity of nature, right? Immaterial abstract laws. Those aren't justifiable in atheistic worldviews, for example. So, in order to engage in science, both historically and philosophically, this was the case. You have to assume things about the universe. in order to engage in science. You have to assume that the future will be like the past, right? Because, and you don't know that. You don't know that unless there's a God who says, yeah, I have regularity in nature. I have, you know, and he controls the laws, the logical laws, the physical laws of the universe. There's a transcendent, objective deity who is the one who's controlling the universe. If you don't have that control or regularity, you don't know that regularity is real. If you're an atheist, you can't say, well, I know the law of anything because you don't know laws. You just see regularities, but you don't know that it's a law. But in order to engage in science and develop technology, you have to assume there is a law, and that's the basis upon which you can further technology. But you can't have that assumption under a non-Christian atheistic worldview. And so my argument is that even technology itself and the pursuit of science is founded on, it doesn't mean everyone has to be Christians. I'm just saying it's founded
Mhm.
upon assumptions of reality that
Right.
only comport with Christianity.
Well,
And so,
I would say the scientific method definitely, like, yes, from an atheist point of view, is it's not going to work. But I think from any other spiritual view, it does work. And always thought, look, the science is born out of sort of like Hermeticism and philosophy, rather than it being in alchemy, rather than it being born out of Christianity.
mhm, mhm. Well, there certainly has been alchemy throughout the years and such, and Hermeticism. I don't know a lot about that stuff, just a little bit about it. But um, so so tell me what alchemy is then. You define alchemy,
Alchemy is a big, hard one to describe. Like, like on the surface, turning lead into gold,
right?
by following these 7 steps. But as
And what
far
do you think
as,
is true about alchemy then?
well, there's one that you can actually turn lead into gold physically. I think it also, one of the things that alchemy shows is that physical matter doesn't exist. In a lot of ways, alchemy is sort of like this way. It really goes well with quantum physics in a way, because matter isn't actually real. Everything is just this mental projection. There's no um, proof that I can find that this reality is an actual substantial reality. This is just a dream that we're living in.
Oh, so you're kind of like
And
a Berkeleyan
um,
or Barclayan. His name was Barclay, David Barclay, right?
I don't know
A
who he
projection of the
is,
mind.
but I mean, I look at it from like this Hermetic Egyptian type of view and from a quantum
Okay.
view. Um, but yeah, it's just, and also from a Zen Buddhism, also will say all is mind, everything is mind, everything is a projection of the mind. So if nothing is actually real, then we can kind of transmute. That means we're transmuting energy. That's what we're doing. We're taking information and somehow transmuting it, just like other creatures on this planet, just like a plant, you know, the changes like carbon into air.
Mhm.
We're transmuting spiritual energy as humans, and I think that's what we're doing.
Is
And
your it,
that's what alchemy is all about. It's all about transmutation, boiling things down to the philosopher's stone, really connecting again with the absolute or the awe.
Mhm. The name of your show,
Unity
what is it?
Manifest.
Unity Manifest. So would you call yourself a monist, meaning all is one?
I wouldn't call myself anything because I'm not sure that I even
Okay.
exist.
So, but with your definition of unity, why do you stress unity over, say, diversity?
Because
Do you
of
believe that
oneness,
there's
yes.
diversity?
I think that um, everything descends from the one, just like
Okay.
just like you do. It's really my belief in the beliefs of religions aren't 100% separate, really. I do believe there was a creator, where for a long time, truthfully, I didn't.
Hmm. What got you to believe there was a creator?
Near death experience.
Oh, really? What was that like?
It was nice. It was really nice. But I mean, there was no beings or anything like that. It's not really something you can put into a human type of expression. It can't be expressed so much as experienced. So when a person has a near death experience, it's definitely a life changing. It's also a reaffirms that we're more than a physical body. And to me, it also reaffirms the idea that my physical body is just nothing but an illusion, that there's
Hmm.
another true reality beyond this.
That's interesting. I've never had one, and I've heard of some stories that are fascinating, But my question would be like, does it prove that material is an illusion, or does it just prove that there are two facets, two dimensions of reality, material and immaterial?
Quantum physics shows that there is no material reality. When they go down into protons and neutrons and these different fields and the way things interact, nobody's really been able to identify matter, actual physical matter. They say if it does actually exist, it's like, out of like what we're perceiving, it's like not even 1% of it would be physical matter. Everything else is
Mhm.
just movement, it's vibration, nothing else, according to
Mhm.
science.
Well, then what are they studying? Are they just studying an illusion, or are they studying something that actually is real?
It is an illusion. I think what we're
So
studying
then how do
is
they know that
what
their
we're
theories are
studying is
right?
what we're studying is mathematics, or what they're studying, I think, is math and sacred geometry. I think that's
Okay.
what this just sort of runs more like an algorithm almost.
Hmm. That's interesting.
And I don't know, like I see some of that idea though in the Bible also, like when in the Bible, for example, um, Ezekiel's vision, which a lot of people will say is an extraterrestrial event, but what it could really be is a um, a formula
For what?
for communicating with the divine.
Hmm.
Like it could, a lot of people look at that as possibly being like a Kabbalistic formula.
Hmm. Yeah, it's called Merkava
Yeah,
mysticism, that came out of yeah, I've read a little bit on that. Um, but to me, it the question I have about the everything's an illusion or there's no real material reality is I don't know what it is you're studying. What are you finding? What are you studying if there's no material real? What I'm saying? Like you're just studying brain waves, but how can you study brain waves if they're not material or real? If there's nothing
you
there.
can't
S-
exactly.
s-
It's
So what are they
non-local
what are they
consciousness.
what are they doing? They're just playing with math or
Well,
how do they
I think they're trying to figure it out, but all arrows seem to point towards, there being some source of non-local consciousness, which also kind of reaffirms what you believe too.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
because if God is doing all these things, right? And if only thing in the universe that exists is God, the only thing he has to manifest out of is his own thoughts and imagination.
That's kind of true. I
So
kind of
we
agree.
so we have to exist within the imagination of God. He had to have somehow imagined a container to create a reality. And he created that
Yeah.
reality by setting up a set of rules. Those set of rules could be put into mathematical or geometrical terms, and
Yeah.
that's where we existed.
But that means objective reality.
It does
It's
mean
not,
objective reality,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, for
So how
us,
can
it's
you,
definitely objective
right.
and
So
relative too
the
for
the
us.
difference would be between us would be first of all, I don't know a lot about quantum physics. I've heard of the common expressions of quantum foam and all that kind of stuff
Mm-hmm.
and spook what is it spooky something
Spooky
at a distance.
distance, yes. Spooky
Yeah,
action at a distance, yes.
and I believe that
Entanglement.
consciousness is a real thing, and that there's like you're saying there's some similarities in that. I would not deny that that reality itself, as we go down deeper and deeper, it becomes more confusing to us because it's so beyond our understanding. So I don't have any problem with those interesting notions. But there are some things that I don't think are feasible or possible as you're trying to think through what is this reality like. And one of them is I don't believe all of reality comes from one.
Mhm.
In fact, if you have that oneness as your as an ultimate paradigm, then you have no way to account for all the diversity that you see in the world.
But
I
you kind
believe
of
that
do. It's just like shining a light through a
no,
prism.
no, it's an illusion, right? It's an illusion, so it
Yes,
doesn't really
that's what I'm
exist.
saying. Yes, an
But
illusion.
see, but see, the problem is you couldn't even think of diversity if there wasn't a diversity to be thought of.
That's true
In other
too.
words, if
Yes.
everything was truly one, then there couldn't even be a unity of diversity because that would be a division
Mhm.
from the oneness. So what I'm saying is philosophically, and of course, we're doing all this right now, which is my argument against oneism. My argument is you really can't have oneness as the fundamental reality because you couldn't be doing what you're doing right now. So it contradicts itself so completely that it's not feasible. I do think though, however, this is why the Trinity is far more than just this, you know, oh, it's just some theological doctrine, three in one, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. It's just your mythological religion. No, it's actually the philosophical foundation for all thinking, reasoning, and science, etc. Because God is ultimately one and many equally. And the only way that you can explore reality in its diversity and oneness is if you have that equal ultimacy of both oneness and diversity, or unity and diversity. And the only philosophical premise that exists that has that is the triune God of the Bible.
Which is
And so,
also a
Phil,
part of alchemy too.
what do you mean?
Well, they break things down into three elements. I think it's mercury, salt, and water, and that's the alchemical. They say
Are
that
they
the
doing it
three.
based? Is that based on the Bible or something like that? Or I don't know. I don't
I,
know much about the Hermetics.
I don't know if it comes from the Bible. Well, I think the
Or it's
idea from
just
the.
threeness.
I would say that the idea from the Bible probably comes from alchemy.
Oh yeah, you think
Yeah,
so, huh?
yeah. I think
So,
it predates our modern Bible. Probably
and how
goes
would you
back
know
to like
that?
Sumerians.
But where in Sumer? I've read
Well,
Sumerian literature. I don't see anything
it
like that in
it
Sumerian
definitely
literature.
comes from Hermeticism.
Okay. What
Like
I don't know. I
the
don't know anything
Hermetic
about the history
the
of
Hermetic tablet
Hermeticism.
of Trismegistus or something like that.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, Trismegistus. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
And
Trisymachus,
yes,
Trisymachus, or something like that.
and then like apparently like if you ask Egyptians where they got their lore from, they would say, or from Plato's view, Atlantis,
Mhm.
which obviously got wiped out during the flood, if it existed.
Yeah, and there's a lot of theories about Atlantis too. I
So
don't know too much
it
about it,
does
but
all tie together
mhm.
in a unique way, I think.
Well, yeah, the way I see that is that God has definitely made us with very creative, imaginative minds, and so and just like a criminal, like you ever see like when criminals, all the effort that some criminals put into their crime, like whatever, whether it's a heist or a, scam, right? Like all the scams that, you think like, man, if they use that for good instead of for evil, imagine how much good they could accomplish, right? So God has made us creative, but we definitely like to come up with all kinds of philosophies and ideas, and some good, some bad. I don't know, uh, and I don't know much about the whole Hermeticism thing, so I really couldn't even speak to that. But from what I have heard though, the Hermeticism, you know, you at best you could say that like the stuff that we mostly know about, like the thing you quoted, the Hermetic Trisymachus or whatever it was,
Yes,
was that like Gnostic literature or something
it
like that?
is.
So
Yeah.
a lot of that comes from Gnostic, and the Gnostics was like 200, excuse me, 200, 300 AD. So, that was when that stuff came out. And yeah, of course they're going to call back to Egypt and stuff. But if you go back into Egypt, I have read a
I
lot
don't
of
know though. Like
Egyptian.
I was also just reading too recently that they had found evidence that Jesus was I forget what group of people there was, a group of Jews like Nassems or something like that.
Essenes.
Essenes, yeah.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
he was learning with them, and that yeah. But I know that we're kind of like going further out
Yeah.
from the Old Testament to the New Testament, but
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
look, watch Wesley Huff as he's the guy that had the great debate with who is that guy? Billy something Crone or
Carson.
something? Carson, Billy Carson, that's it.
Billy Carson's a fraud, though, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I know,
He's,
but it kind of brought Wesley Huff into the limelight, and he does a lot of study of all these ancient manuscripts and their backgrounds and stuff, which
mhm.
is very fascinating. I've been finding him to be interesting, but he's the guy who would know a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But I
I
have
think I
read
saw
Egyptian.
that debate actually. I did
Oh
see
yeah,
that.
yeah, it
Yes,
was
I
good.
saw that
I
because
liked it.
he kind of humiliated Billy Carson
Yeah,
in
and
some of the
look,
ways.
it
Yes.
just goes to show that you can't make these broad, common criticisms of Christianity because so many of them are just not rooted. They're just rooted in people making stuff up, and it goes on and on. But what I'm getting to is, I'm sure you can trace a history of things developing and connected to, and because yeah, there were mystery religions, for instance, in the first century that I found out about. The religion of the Roman soldiers, which was Mithras, was their
Hmm.
sort of their deity, and there's a lot of mysticism. So there's always been mysticism, is my point. And even Egypt, I've read their literature and Sumerian literature and stuff, but it's not the same as the modern, or the ancient Gnostic and stuff. They've all got different traditions and different thoughts and beliefs. So I don't know if I would connect all that stuff. People want to make it connected so that it goes back far, goes back into the distance. But um, I don't know. Other than just to say that what I've already been talking about, which is um, when you're considering these other, this is funny. I thought I was going to come on and talk about my novel, Judah Maccabee. And look at us. Oh, whatever. Go buy my book, Judah Maccabee. It's great. It's great. But I mean, to be honest, it's rooted in what we're talking about, right? This
Hmm.
belief, which I think what comes down to is this: is like, what is reality? What is reality? Is it a heavenly and earthly realm like the Bible reveals, but a heavenly and earthly realm that is subject to the creator God, the triune God of the Bible? Or is it these other views, materialistic or all a projection of the mind, etc.? And I, of course, take the biblical view of no, it's spiritual,
Hmm.
heavenly and earthly, and the triune God of the Bible. And yeah, I know that there's lots of other texts and lots of other claims and stuff, and that's all the you know stuff that people have to read and study and go deeper in because I can't sit there and just answer it all, right at the
Right.
moment. But I do think it's very clear
Either.
that the Bible is probably the most attacked literature in all of history, and it's standing up pretty amazingly well. That's at least enough for me to tell people, look, I'm not saying that that proves it or anything like that, but at
Hmm.
least should tell you that, look, you can't attack. Like I've gone into, let me give you an example. I've critiqued other literature and it just falls apart, and the Bible still stays strong, and that's something to at least go. Maybe there's something about it that's cohesive in a way that can't be corrupted like other things can. But let me give you an example. So writing my book Judah Maccabee, um, uh, there's four books called Maccabees. First Maccabees, second, third, and fourth Maccabees. And the first two are known to be somewhat historical, more so than the others. The
Hmm.
others are more philosophical. And that's where I drew my story from. It's the story of Hanukkah. The story of Hanukkah, which is not in the Bible, but it is a festival that is even celebrated today.
Torah
And
comes from,
uh,
right?
n- no,
No.
it's in the Apocrypha.
Apocrypha.
And so the book of Maccabees, but when you look into the book of Maccabees, there's first and second Maccabees telling the same stories, and they've got completely different viewpoints and facts are completely different. Not all the time, but I'm just saying,
Hmm.
so significant that you can see, okay, one was written by a Sadducee who denies the resurrection, who denies resurrection is possible, and they deny spiritual beings.
Hmm.
The other one, Second Maccabees, was written probably by a Pharisee who believes in resurrection because there's statements of the resurrection and there's statements of spiritual beings. Now, this just goes to show that these things can break down. Now, I know people claim that the Bible does that too, but there's also been, plenty of research scholarship that has shown that no, it's not what you think it is. It's not contradictory. We can't go into that here. But for every Bart Ehrman, there's a Daniel Wallace who has all the answers to it, and I've listened to him, and James White. I've listened to the answers, and the answers are far more satisfying than the doubts. But I say go for it, explore the doubts, but listen to
Hmm.
people who are giving answers to see maybe there's not weight in the doubts that you think there is. And look, I read ancient literature too, other mystical stuff like that. I don't believe that it depicts objective reality, for multiple reasons that we've talked about today. I'm very philosophical, so I see these things philosophically, and things like, like I said, polytheism is diversity without unity. Monism, or the belief that all is one, is unity without diversity. These things they can't make they can't make coherent understandings of the world that as we're perceiving it. And my argument is that the Trinity of the Bible does. It provides the unity and diversity that addresses these things.
Sure.
But other people are not as philosophical. Maybe they're more historical and see, well, did these things in the Bible really happen, or is the Bible lying, or is it all made up, or whatever? Fine, but I would just say, look, but are re go and read the people
Hmm.
who are defending it and the ones who are attacking it. But don't just read one perspective. Don't just say, I'm just going to read Bart Ehrman. And, oh, hey, everything he said, yeah, Bible's contradictory, so it's no good. Yeah, read a guy who answers Bart Ehrman, and you might find that Bart Ehrman's arguments are not very good against the Bible. That's what I would argue. So that would be my conclusion in terms of this is a fun discussion. I actually do
Yeah.
enjoy talking about different perspectives and stuff like that. And I appreciate that about your show, actually. But in today's world, I just see a lot of people they don't listen to both sides in general. Listen to both sides. Get both sides. Stop just listening to one side. And I'm all for that. Don't just listen. Don't just read the Bible. Read other stuff, sure. But when you're reading the Bible, don't read the attacks on the Bible. Read it from the insider, because it's the insider's view. Like you talking to me, you know better about the Hermeticism than I do. So I'm not going to just attack it arbitrarily unless I got to listen to what you have to say, that kind of thing. So I would hope and pray that
Right.
people would do that with the Bible as well.
Yeah, and I think that's fantastic about you, like you're not going to tell your kids, don't do it with at least philosophical material.
Well, some things I will. So don't have sex with animals.
Oh yeah, it's bad. We don't want to hurt animals. So I want to thank you for coming on. It was a
Thanks for
great
having me, Gary.
conversation. And before we wrap it up, where's the best place for my listeners to find you?
Well, all my books are on Amazon.com exclusively. And you know what? If you know anything about Amazon, you just go right there, type in my name, find my office page, you'll see everything you need. But if you're curious about me and my website, it's Godawa.com, Godawa.com. And I do have I do have free scholarly articles about the things that I'm writing about. So I provide more than just, hey, buy this book. I also have like pictures of characters in my novels, which is
Mm.
the most fun thing of all, is to cast your stories, your novels and stuff. And even though we didn't talk at all about the novels or stories and stuff, the worldview that I'm communicating through my story is definitely what I was expressing today. And if you're interested or curious about that, what would that look like? That's where you can find the information, my website or Amazon.
See, that's one of the cool things too. Like as a writer and as a fiction writer too, you are in a way playing God with your
No,
characters.
I am an image of God. That's what the Bible says. We are in the image of God, which means we reflect His presence. It doesn't mean
Yes.
we are necessarily. But by the
That's a
way,
good that's a good view. And I would agree with
yeah.
the
So,
reflection
so it's
analogy.
like you and I mean, I can see clearly you have a
Nice.
different worldview than I, but we're not,
Mhm.
and we're not as far apart as we may think. Like
Right.
we 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 would agree on some things, but just have different interpretations of them. You know what I mean? And I think that's what is interesting and curious. But the one thing I did forget, like that would actually be the most relevant to our entire discussion today. Well, not more, but equally relevant is all my books have been like Bible stories retold with this supernatural stuff, right? But I did recently just put out one book that was a modern day story called Cruel Logic. And it's a story of a serial killer, and he's a philosopher. And he's addressing a lot of the philosophical things we talked about here. And he's in a woke university, and he's killing university professors, and he's debating them before he kills them. And the topic of the debate is, give me one valid reason why I should not kill you, and I will let you go. And he means it. He really will. If and so the question is, why can't they come up with a valid reason why killing them is evil, right? And so, in a way, if you're interested in more modern type of story and addressing the philosophical aspects in a narrative, and look, I love entertainment and serial killing. So, in boy, that's a weird thing, right?
You're right.
I'm a writer. I love serial killer stories, right? I love serial killing. Yeah, right. I love serial killer stories because they're a great way to explore evil versus good. You know what I mean? And so if that's your thing, then you might find that book Cruel Logic to be a curiosity as well.
It's
Thanks for
great.
letting me go on and on.
Anytime, man. You're welcome anytime on the show. So again, thank you for being on. And I'm going to put a link to your Amazon page and to your web page in the notes of this episode so my listeners can find you. It's been a pleasure having you. And just hang on for one moment while I play the outro.